Well, we're beginning to wrap up just 2 more weeks, this Sunday and next Sunday, our Epiphany sermon series, a new idea. But this week, the new idea is more about what we're going to do instead of what we're not going to do. More about do's than about don'ts. I'd like to begin with a really sad story that was reported just this month. It happened in Turkey in December. A beautiful young woman, Siren Özdemir, 20-year-old ballet student, in a small city in Turkey, was unlocking her door when a man spoke to her from behind her, and before her assailant was finished, this beautiful young life was ended. The 36-year-old man was arrested. He admitted he'd done it, and when he was questioned as to why, he said, because she's a woman. And women don't belong out here on their own. They should stay home with their husbands, their fathers, their brothers. And he was only echoing the sentiment of the Turkish government, whose president declared just last year that women who pursue a career instead of marriage and family are only half persons, and that every woman in Turkey should expect to bear 3 children at least. Meanwhile, it was reported in January here in the United States that a 18-year-old Native American girl close to Billings, Montana, her name Selena Not Afraid, had disappeared. The family kept vigil for her. She became the 28th young woman from that tribe in that area of Montana to die or disappear in the last year. 28. It's an epidemic among Native American women. Some 1,600 have disappeared over the last several years with no results on their whereabouts or their fate. And then down in Plano, Texas, Dawn Wilcox, a retired registered nurse, is keeping track. She's keeping track on behalf of a women's violence project. And what she has discovered is that women are falling victim to all manner of abuse and death at an ever-increasing rate in the United States of America. What does this have to do with the gospel today? This is an example, these are examples of the contempt for basic human life that is on a resurgence in our culture, and not just ours, but worldwide. And what does that have to do with the gospel? Jesus is speaking against contempt. What is contempt? That's finding that somebody is not worthy of being considered a full person. Somebody is not worthy of your respect, of your love. And that contempt has spread even to young children. It was reported just this week that in Florida schools, children as young as 2nd grade have adopted these contemptuous attitudes that they see grown-ups using in the public media, television, public conversation. It's a resurgence of feminism, anti-feminism, racism, ageism, and it's frightening. In the gospel today, Jesus said, even if you call someone a fool, you have done the same as to kill them. And if you say raka to your brother or sister, you have placed yourself liable to the fires of hell. Raka, by the way, is an onomatopoeia in Aramaic. Remember what onomatopoeia meant? Senior high English. It's a word that repeats a sound. Raka is the sound of spitting on someone, an utter term of contempt. So what's the remedy for contempt? Jesus was all about this. When asked in Mark's Gospel, 12th chapter, what's the greatest commandment? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And the second one is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. Hatred for a brother, Jesus says, is hatred toward God. Why? Because God created us out of his great love. And how do we best counter all of the contempt and violence and hatred of this world? It's by loving your neighbor as yourself. how do we do that on a practical way? Well, Jesus goes further and he says, if you're bringing your gift to the altar and you remember that a brother or sister has something against you, put down your gift and go make peace with them before you give a gift to God. And if you're standing and praying and remember that a brother or sister has something against you, go first and make peace with them before you even offer a word of prayer to God. Jesus is saying that harmony, brotherhood, sisterhood, peace with neighbor is more important than any of our religious acts. And on Sunday morning, after we finish our prayers, we have that moment of sharing the peace of Christ. And for most of us, it's just a joyful moment to finally get up and to not have to listen for a while. And to go greet a neighbor and share fellowship. But what it's all about is making sure we're at peace with each other. The Little Baptist church where my wife and I were married had this tradition. Before they celebrated communion, and they only had communion once a month, the pastor would get up and say, "Is the congregation at peace?" And the most powerful moment in that was the Sunday I was there, and someone walked forward and said, "I would like to have so-and-so join me up here." And before any of the communion liturgy was shared, the first person up said, "I want to apologize to you, my brother, and ask for your forgiveness in front of this whole congregation." That's what the peace of Christ is really all about. Jesus says none of your religious carryings on have any meaning if you're not at peace with your brothers and your sisters. A peace that is born in the commandments to honor father and mother so that it'll go well for you in the land God is going to give you, that is honored in the commandments that say don't kill, don't steal, don't lie, don't commit adultery, don't covet. And while we're talking about adultery, that's the second topic that Jesus addressed. And I remember one Sunday morning I preached on this topic, and a dear old grandma came up after service to me and said, "How dare you? How dare you?" And I said, "What?" And she said, "How dare you talk about my granddaughter?" I wasn't talking about her granddaughter. But we feel that burn, don't we, whenever anybody talks about divorce, adultery. We have a culture where that has become even more of an issue personally than it was when I was a kid, where it was just something that I remember, we just don't talk about that, as if it might go away. No, it doesn't. So what is Jesus saying? Well, really, it's a power issue of men over women in the Bible. It was a power issue because a woman could not give a certificate of divorce to a husband. Only the man could give it to the woman. And a woman was completely under the authority of the man. So for Jesus, this business of breaking promises, not keeping faith with your marital promises, was as much an issue of, again, contempt and power over powerless people. And what is the do here? Just like the first do in the do not murder is do love each other. Here the do is do keep your promises. And that's why anytime we get to celebrate 57th wedding anniversaries, I will pray, thank you, Lord, for this witness set before us of a man and a woman keeping their promises. And one of the things I've always loved about the United Methodist Church is that we care much more about keeping promises in marriage than we do about accusing people of things in relationship. We are a church that's often been called the church of the second chance and the third chance and even the fourth and fifth chance in Christian marriage, because we believe there's always hope for people to keep their promises. Finally, Jesus goes into a long dissertation on don't swear by anything, not by the temple, not by God, not by the earth, not on your own head. Don't swear. Simply let your yes be yes, your no be no. Tell the truth. begin in your heart and in your mind with the intention to tell the truth. That's hard, isn't it? I mean, it goes all the way back now over 20 years to a famous television statement by a leader of our country that says, well, it all depends on what is. No, it doesn't depend on what is. Tell the truth or keep silent. It's really just that simple. There's a line from a Shakespeare's play, Hamlet, where the gentleman speaking says, "The lady doth protest too much." And it has been my experience that when there's an awful lot of protesting and conversation going on, there's not a lot of truth-telling going on. I loved old silent Calvin Coolidge. And one of the favorite stories I have from President Calvin Coolidge, who was notoriously reticent, didn't like to talk, was at a White House state dinner, and a lady kept pestering him, and he wouldn't even look at her. And finally, she tugged on his sleeve and said, "Mr. President, I have a bet with my best friend that I can make you say more than 2 words. Now speak to me." And he turned to her and said, "You lose." Well, we lose when we lie, don't we? We lose when we tell only half-truths and part-truths. Well, this last week was a momentous week for the Shawnee Mission School District, suburban Kansas City, Missouri. They had the TV news there. It was an historic moment in their district school board meeting where the school board was trying to impose a 3-year contract on their teachers. And part of the issue that was being fought about between the school district and the contracted teachers was that class sizes were running anywhere from 30 to 42 kids. And the teachers were saying, this is undoable. Now, the folks who were against the teachers were saying, yeah, but you're the highest paid school district in Kansas. You can't expect to be treated any better. And then in one dramatic moment, one of their best teachers, most respected teachers, asked to speak to the school board on camera in front of the TV, and she said, "I resign. I resign as a teacher in this school district, and it grieves my heart deeply because the children are being hurt. But here's why I resign. You don't respect us. You hold us in contempt." And what I thought was a fascinating resolution to that drama was that the State Department of Labor ruled the school district had acted unlawfully in trying to impose a 3-year contract on their teachers. So it's an unresolved issue, but it brings into focus what happens when we do not respect each other, love each other, tell the truth to each other, care about each other, keep our promises with each other. Jake Owensby, in his blog, Finding God in Messy Places, says, we are in an historic epidemic in this country. He said, I went to the airport this week and I saw so many people wearing face masks. And I asked one why, and they said, well, coronavirus. Oh, in case you haven't heard, coronavirus is not an epidemic here. There are a handful of reported cases in the United States of America. It is not a crisis in America. So we asked this person, why are you wearing a face mask? Says fear of coronavirus. He says, well, I want to protect myself. I don't want to get it. And Jake Owensby says, that's America today. I want to protect myself. I don't really care about a lot of other people, but I'm going to protect myself. Jake Owensby said, instead of being so concerned about protecting yourself, why don't you try seeking the common good? He says there's 4 things that Jesus teaches about seeking the common good. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love your enemy. Pray for your enemy. Take care of the poor, the homeless, the disabled, the hungry, the prisoner. Take care of your neighbor. You are the solution to part of the problem. And most of all, forgive. Seek reconciliation. And then I love this quote from Barbara Brown Taylor in her book, Gospel Medicine. She says, "Our contempt for each other is killing us. It is time that we take a positive step. Remember, for all those folks who are waiting in the darkness, you are their light." Let us pray. Gracious and loving God, you have promised to be the strength for all who put their trust in you. There's just so many things beyond our capacity to deal with. We are so tempted to withdraw into ourselves and protect ourselves, take care of ourselves. But Jesus, if you'd done that, there would be no hope. You had every right to protect yourself and care for yourself against all the assaults of all the people against you when you walked this earth, but instead, you reached out to forgive, to welcome, to encourage, to help, to heal, and even to raise the dead before you suffered and died for us. So teach us, Jesus, to risk boldly, to love greatly, to forgive daily, and to seek to live at peace with brothers and sisters, not for our own good, but for the glory of God. And we all say,